Sane karma Uta vardanya shri Vajra varsa manya sarva siddhi hum Om Guru Vajra Dhar Suma Timo Nisha Sane karma Uta vardanya shri Vajra varsa manya sarva siddhi hum Om Guru Vajra Dhar Timo Nisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dar Suma Timo Nisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Dhagi jetsun lama tuje che nyamda dala tuje siksu so gebe shesan dala tendo so uyon sunge nawa tsedo so tseje ningne sowa debe tse tejen korlo vesu lekshune yela sambe dede malupa geme lunge drupra jingelo sonye sodan dikdun shape tse dunge namke yinsu lekshune Labchen tsonyi yonsu zoba dan chera nyedun chanwara jingelo chancho parge nyinsen tukun tu nyu peme siudru lekshune chancho drube gegen kunshi shi tungen de la drubra jingelo dagi lona chola choba dan chumi samjura ngenba shiwa dan chodan tumbe dede malupa beme lungi drubra jingelo Dorna tengne tsera tamche dan teche pardu nekab tamche to Rese kyamne lama kele me tuje chenge dala sikso sol Gongyab drewe nyamda dachala chetun lame tuje rabgongne Kodan sunge nawa dralme tu Nyamsu nyongwe kesan tobrasho kewa kundu yanda lam Drame cheki pela longche chin sadan lamge yonten rabzone Dorje change koba nyur toba shum Pakyuke kudan dagi lu Pakyuke sundan dagi nga Pakyuke tukdan dagi yi Ten yerme chiktu chingi lo Makyuke kudan dagi lu Makyuke sundan dagi nga Makyuke tukdan dagi yi Ten yerme chiktu chingi lo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Sangye Chodan Soge Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonamgi Drola Pinchira Sangye Druparasho Sangye Chodan Soge Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonamgi Drola Pinchira Sangye Druparasho Sangye Chodan Soge Chonamla chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi, dagi jinso gibe sonamgi, drola pinchira sange, druparasho. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge into enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. So, first of all, I would like to say that I was supposed originally to give the teachings today in the morning. Then we had the puja, and then we had the first, it was in the beginning of the afternoon, then after it passed, I had some appointments which I could not change today. Were not exactly appointments, were like some, let's say, not exactly an emergency, but things that I needed to do. And somehow I learned in these past years here in the center and doing this work that sometimes when you have more than one thing together that we need to do, we need just to choose which is the one with more greater priority at that moment and relax with the other. Otherwise, we get stressed up. So that's what I did this morning and after. So finally I was able to clear up everything and then just come here. So today, as we continue the text of Lama Tsongkhapa, it's in the question 56. It's where Lama Tsongkhapa starts stating different forms of meditating on the true nature of reality, which are actually wrong forms of meditating, which seems to be the meditation on the true nature of reality, but actually are not. Okay? So why is this so important? Basically, the main point is that our view, our own paradigm, the world view within which we live, it determines every experience we have in life. It determines our actions. It determines our judgment, our discernment. It determines everything. So here it's not a matter of, okay, let's play a little bit with philosophy. I think this, you think that. It's the view that we have of reality determines our life, determines everything that we do and how we live. That's why it's so fundamental. That's why it's so important. Yes, it's true that we are all free to think what we want. But there are some ways of thinking and relating to reality which bring more suffering, some ways which bring less suffering and more joy and satisfaction. So the question is, what is my view of reality? So the objective is generating a view of reality which is coherent with reality. The more we are coherent, the less we suffer. So, generally speaking, there are two main ways of relating to reality which are incorrect, which are called the two extremes, the extreme of nihilism and the extreme of eternalism. So when we talk about the extreme of nihilism, it means the point of view in which reality does not exist. Basically what happens is that because reality doesn't exist as it seems, then it doesn't exist at all. And this point of view actually does exist. There are different people that have this idea that, okay, nothing exists, just relax, do whatever you want because nothing exists. And this is the first type of view, which we call wrong view or extreme view. And it has many subtle manifestations also. There are views that look like it's not exactly nihilistic, but actually it is. For example, the view that does not believe in a continuation after death is actually a nihilistic view. There are different levels of this, and one of them is like when we talk about emptiness, and then thinking that, okay, if all phenomena are of the nature of emptiness, then nothing actually exists. Everything is just an illusion. There is no good or bad. Everything is just an illusion. This is a nihilistic view, okay, which is quite dangerous. Nihilistic views are quite dangerous. Because by developing a nihilistic view, we develop a lack of responsibility within our actions. Because if nothing exists, who cares what I do? So there is no basis for compassion, there is no basis for awareness of our actions, and so on. On the other hand, we have what is called the eternalistic views. Eternalistic views, is when there is something that exists and we believe it doesn't exist. The eternalistic view is when we believe that something that doesn't exist exists. Okay? This is trying to find the balance. And with the centuries, there were many different points of view which manifested, which actually were not coherent with reality, which were bringing the practitioner or to a nihilistic view or to an eternalistic view. So here Lama Tsongkhapa is citing a few of them to help us not to fall in one of the extremes. And the reason why this is so important is because once we fall in an extreme, this will influence our life completely. The way of our actions, the way of our choices, the way of our judgments, everything is influenced by the view that we have of reality. That's why it's so important. Okay? So, I'll just read some of them here first. Gashini, tokpa yin chinche sange, kang duk gagyu yin serwe tsempa chigdam. Yang gashi, tokpa sange tamche, gagyu ma yin, tokpa chitsang geba tsamgi, nyamto gebar yin. Perna, pushin jitsang mangin, meche geonwa yin serwe, tsempa chik teni galwa tak joto. Yang gashi, namdo maripa chembotes, she sumbe, namdo ni maripa yin serwe tsempa chigdas. Yang gashi, namdo choko yin serwe tsempa chikte teni kyan tak joto. Yang gashi, di matrobar, tsene nebetse, sange samnyande yins, chungshik trebetse, semchen nam, korwa yin serwe tsempa chigda. Yang gashi, namdo trebetse, gyuba tsam trokyam, tenam gingola chechere tebe, chogo lam char serwe, tsenchik teni kyan galos. Yang gashi, mungundan lunedan namdo gakpa tsamle jungwe, tong nam bembum te chogu yins, namgun chundengi tomba yinbe na, soso kiwo kyang, chogu ngosum tu tongwa ngo trebe tsempa chigdans. Yang gashi, te tabu te chogu yonsu zoba tongwa mingis, chogu na tseam, yanla kam chashe tongwa yin serwe tsempa chik. Yang gashi, te tabu chogu yonsu zoba dan chashe kanyan tongwa mingi, tongba tsam tongwa yin. Tongba la yang, rangtong dan shento ni yobe nane, dadra dan sensang deba rangtong ngenba te mingis, umaba chenpo tome debe, shento te yinbe, tsemba chikdans. Yang, shenam ngama la, tongnam tenang, rangtong yin shebe, tsemba chik te, te nikyang galos. Yang gashi, tomba ngumingi tombe suksam dangins, choko mayingi, choko tak ins, perna me onwe tak tuwa tongwa shingni, serwe tsemba chikdans. Yang gashi, chagya chimbo tawa ngoshi tedang, jorwa yangla drugi, sordo ni ne chik rangtong yin. Teyi tengtu, jor drugi samdengi tawa shentong, tawa pargyur yos. Tena chakshin le jorju tawes, te serwa so ta yeba chik nangshin. Okay. So let's just first read it and then we give a rough explanation. Because if we go into very small details about it, I think for most of us that are here is a little bit too much details. Okay. So, section of the view. In brief, page 64. Question number 56. In brief, among what I have reported above, there are some sacred points regarding the view. But I indeed reported about it by making a rough synthesis. Generally, there are infinite ways of approaching the view, such as the followings. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, I'm going to just cite some of the views regarding correct view of reality. And I'm not even entering into details on them. I'm just going roughly through them. And here we have some of them. I will just first read them, which says, one group says, whatever is conceptual is to be negated, whether it's good or bad. Some people say we just need to eliminate any conceptual thought. Another group says, all the good and bad conceptual thoughts are not to be negated. The more conceptual thoughts you have, the more experiential realizations you will have. For example, the more firewood you add to the fire, the more flames the fire there will be. These two groups are thus exactly in opposite to each other. One group quoted as following passage of a text, conception is greater than ignorance, and says that conception is ignorance. Another group says conception is dharmakaya. Mental ideas conceptualizing is dharmakaya. These two groups are also opposite to each other. And some say, when the mind is left alone, suspended without wandering around, it is a Buddha or a nirvana. When it wanders and jumps a little bit, the sentient beings are wandering. This is one group. Another group says, when our conceptual thoughts wander, the more threads of thoughts we stream out, the more we watch their nature, whereby the Dharmakaya dawns to us nakedly. These two groups are also contradictory. Another group says, the hazy vision, the mere negation of the dark room, body posture, and conception is the Dharmakaya. It is an emptiness that has all the aspects. Therefore, we introduce the Dharmakaya, which is even an ordinary being can see directly. And some say that that is not the whole seeing of Dharmakaya. That is only the seeing of the Dharmakaya's nose tip, or a limb or a part. Some say that is not the seeing of neither the whole Dharmakaya or any part of it. It is the seeing of a mere empty. Furthermore, the empty has two types, intrinsic emptiness and extrinsic emptiness. We call Rangtong and Shentong. Normally, we have the so-called, here is translated as Rangtong, intrinsic emptiness, which is the one that normally Lama Tsongkhapa and so on stated. And there is the one called Shentong, which is like extrinsic emptiness, that emptiness that depends on something else. Basically, the first emptiness, Rangtong, it means the emptiness that is, it does not depend on anything to be emptied, simply it is empty. Shentong means it is empty in dependence of something else. Something like this. It's quite subtle, actually. For these two, the mere empty here is not the evil intrinsic emptiness asserted by Chandrakirti and Haribhadra, but it is the extrinsic emptiness asserted by the middle wayer Asanga. One group says, it is like that previous approach, just the vision of what is perceived is the intrinsic emptiness. These two are also contradictory. Another group says, the above hazy wisdom is a form or a brightness, which is empty of the emptiness, the known thing. It is not a Dharmakaya, it is the sign of a Dharmakaya. For instance, it is like seeing smoke as a sign of the coming of fire. Another group says, the actual view of Mahamudra and the individual withdrawal with the 6 branches of preparation refer to the same point of intrinsic emptiness. On that basis, one can increase the extrinsic emptiness, which is the view of mental stabilization from the 6 preparations. Therefore, it appears that there are so many who affirm that the view from the context of 6 branches is higher than the view of Mahamudra. Okay. We will not enter into details here, okay? Because as I said the other day, there are points here that for us to study in details, we stop, we give up our job, we stay here 2-3 years doing nothing more than that, and then we can go into all these details, okay? But basically, the point is the following, which is really important. Are there people around saying things which are a little bit incoherent with reality? Like, one day, I was giving a teaching in one place. And when I finished the teaching, from a different tradition, came one person that was the responsible for the place and the group, and told the group,
Oh, very beautiful teachings Lama gave to us, but you should all remember, there is no difference between path and result. When you are in the path, you are already in the result. Because I was talking about the three main aspects of the path. Then I was looking, okay, sorry. Cannot say I am in the path, I am in the result. It's not like I generate renunciation, I am already a Buddha. But there are people that think like this. There are people that think there is the possibility of having momentary enlightenment. Have you ever heard about, for example, the idea that the correct path is to completely empty the mind of any thought? There is this explanation also. Or if we go, people that explain, for example, our nature is pure. We simply need to recognize it. But what do we mean by having a pure nature? This is also important. What do we actually understand that our nature is pure? This is another problem. And sometimes people think, okay, we are just completely perfect beings, but we don't see it. As long as when we see that we are perfect, then everything comes out. We are Buddhas without knowing it. There are many different points of view, which brings us not to exactly to the path of enlightenment. For example, one worse view is the one that says nothing exists. Everything that we view everything is just an illusion. Nothing exists. What happens if we develop this view? We take away our responsibilities. Okay, nothing exists. I hit you in the face. Don't worry, it doesn't exist. No, everything is empty. What are you complaining about? Okay. Then, this for me, when people have this idea, for me it looks very much like the wrong view of karma, in which sometimes people say, when something good happens, what a good karma I have. When something bad happens, it's your fault. No? This is also more or less the same way. So nothing exists as long as it's useful for me, no? What I need and what I want exists. What is useful for me, that doesn't exist. But anyhow, the point is that there are many texts around which are teaching us that the path is to empty the mind. Is to put the mind completely empty without any thought and things like that. And Lama Tsongkhapa states very clear, this is not really the right way of meditating. Why? Because the root of our suffering is the mind that grasps reality as if it existed objectively, intrinsically. And we need to generate a directly opposite mode of apprehension. And our problem is not to believe that reality exists, because reality does exist. Our problem is not that we have many thoughts. The problem is that we grasp at reality as being of inherent existence. I think a Buddha has much more thoughts than I have. But they are coherent. So, the point here is like, when it's talking about this intrinsic and extrinsic form of emptiness, Rangtong and Shentong, here is the debate, is a debate with the Jonangpa tradition of Jotaranatha. And then there are many, many debates that go here on about the different points of view. The fact is that we don't need to follow one view because of one tradition, but we need to follow a view that is coherent with reality. Okay? From what I have seen up to now, the way how Lama Tsongkhapa shows reality is extremely coherent from all that I have seen to now. The more, even when we try to find faults on it, it's not possible. That's my experience at least. So, this is something very important for us. And as I said before, it's true we have freedom of religion and each one can think what they want. But we need to choose a pathway that is coherent, that we know that we are going in the right direction. And the important thing is to be sure that it is eliminating the main cause of our suffering, which is our ignorance. That's the main point of it. Okay? So, this text, Papunka Rinpoche later had some problems, because while Lama Tsongkhapa tells which are the wrong ways of meditating, and Panchen Losang Chögyam that after he repeats them again, they never give the name of who is doing like this. Papunka Rinpoche in some points He gave the name, family name, address, and everything, no? And then these people were not so happy about it. Okay? But the fact is that if there is someone meditating in a wrong way, what would you say if you see it? Sorry, what you are doing is not good for you. It's not because I respect that you have a different point of view. You can think whatever you want, but from my perspective, you should know that this is not the most correct way. And here, we go a little bit beyond the idea that all traditions bring us to the same result. When it comes to the part of conduct, I would say yes. When it comes to the point of view, I would say no. Even this text here of the questions of Lama Tsongkhapa is divided into 3 parts, which is conduct, behavior, meditation, and the view of reality. The part of conduct and meditation are extremely similar in most traditions. We can take even different religions, different traditions with the same religion. They are very, very similar. Developing love and generosity and compassion, all of that is wonderful and it's very similar. But when it comes to the correct view of reality, when it comes to the paradigm in which we live, to the world view that we have, then we have big differences. But on the other side, the view that we have is the most important thing on our life and on our path. So, this is why some centuries ago, I think quite many centuries ago, more or less 1,500 years, a little bit more maybe, I don't know. I'm very sorry, but my memory regarding time and dates, time and names is really very bad. But the fact was that in Tibet, there were 2 traditions. One tradition which was saying, you need to accumulate merit, need to practice generosity, develop love, everything is interdependent, and so on, which is what we follow. And another tradition which was saying, nothing exists. You just need to empty your mind. All thoughts are bad. It doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. It doesn't matter if it's love or anger, miserliness or generosity. Every thought is negative. You need to empty your mind completely. So at the time there was a king, which as always I don't remember the name. And the king, he called upon the best teachers of both traditions and he said, look, I don't have the wisdom and the knowledge to say who or you of you are right. He's right. But one thing I know, you are contradictory. So it's not possible that both of you can be right. Or you need to develop a mind of love and compassion and so on, or you need to eliminate every thought. What is the right way? No? So he called upon for a public debate at the time. Something that nowadays would never happen, I suppose. So he called on a public debate for the masters of both traditions to come. And they made this public debate, I think it lasted for a week or something like that. I don't know exactly how it lasted. And one of the persons which was debating from the tradition that we follow nowadays was Kamala Shila, I think. And he was from India, and then he was making this debate. And after this, he wrote the 3 levels of 3 stages of meditation, Gomrim Sum, to clarify these points. It's called the 3 stages of meditation. He wrote the text to clarify the points. But the point, what happened is that finally, he won the debate, and the other master, which had a Chinese name, which was Hashang, it's well known as a Hashang, he lost the debate. So by happening that, what happened? The Hashang, together with all his disciples, they were banned from Tibet. Okay, so this tradition is not anymore allowed here. The king sent them away, and then they went up north to China, where he established himself, and he made a new tradition, which actually after developed through other parts of the world also. But the fact is that why was called such a debate? Because we don't need to be Gelupa, we don't need to be Nyingmapa, we don't need to be Kargyupa, we don't need to be Sakyapa, we don't need to be Buddhist, or Hindu or Christian. We need to follow a path that is coherent with reality, that helps us to develop love, compassion, and the wisdom of being coherent with reality. That's what we need to do. Because after when we die, there is no like special pathway for the Buddhists. It's not like, let's say, we all die together, then say, okay, 1 minute we give preference for Gelupa. Gelupa's this way, Nyingmapa that way, Christian that way. It's not like that. So, we must go beyond the name of the tradition and go to look reality directly. No? This is something in Buddhist for me so important. Because very often what we have in religion is what we call, this is the mystery of faith. And this is the dogmas, and we do not discuss about dogmas. Each one just believe in what they want. And I say no. Sure, we can believe in many different things, but let's discuss reality. Through logics, it should be possible to understand. It is said in Buddhist teachings that there is not anything that cannot be understood through logics. Many things you cannot explain through conventional logics and words, experiences, but there is nothing that cannot be understood through logical reasoning. That's why there is a long study which we call Tsema Namdrel in Tibetan, in which there is a logical explanation even to explain reincarnation and the law of karma and many things which is so difficult. And there are years of study with all these parts. But the fact is that we need to put our energy into what is the most coherent thing with reality. And this is what I really request everyone. Do not follow just because, okay, this is what Lama said is our tradition. No, need to check. What is coherent with reality? It's so important. And this is something that Lama Tsongkhapa have done a lot. And sometimes the texts of Lama Tsongkhapa are even a little bit tiring. Because Lama Tsongkhapa, in his greatness, he's going to say all the wrong views of his time. Then he's going, this text is very short, it's not a long text, okay? But there are many long texts in which first he will explain all the wrong views of his time. Then he will explain why they are wrong. Then after he will explain his own point of view. And then after he will make hypothetical questions that could come and explain and give the answers. And in the first part sometimes it's like maybe 20 pages to explain the other views and why they are wrong. And maybe 1 page to explain his own view and another 10 pages to make hypothetical questions. And I sometimes just want to go to their own page and say, I believe in you, let's just see what do you say, no? But it's like so many explanations. Then he's using the logic of reasoning and the recitation of the sutras and texts of Buddha, Nagarjuna and others, and say, okay, this is like this because of this reason, because of that reason, because of that reason. And if you have this doubt, the answer is like this and like that. That's why in Tibet, there was a saying that Hamokona Puten Lati, Tamachena Jelati. If you don't know something, ask Puten. Because there was a master called Puten Tamche Kempa. He wrote texts about almost every subject. More than 100 volumes he wrote. And he was a very wise master and such great knowledge. And then what the verse says, if you don't know about something, ask Puten. If you are not sure about something, you have doubt about something, ask Lama Tsongkhapa. Because Lama Tsongkhapa always had this ability of being precise and making statements that are sharp and precise. So here, he's showing to us some of the forms of meditation which are not correct. Which doesn't mean they are negative or bad, which means they are not bringing us to the development of wisdom. Okay? And I'm sorry to say, but it happened in history that the fact that Lama Tsongkhapa was so clear about things. In my own point of view, Lama Tsongkhapa didn't want to make a new tradition or say that the other was wrong. He just wanted to have coherence with reality. But the others didn't want that. Not all, but many didn't want. So finally he ended up making a new tradition and looks like he's criticizing others. He's not criticizing others, he's just shaking a little bit us and saying, be careful, look what are you doing. If you meditate like this, that's not correct because of this and that reason. That's what he's trying to do for us. Okay? So it's just important for us to see and understand. I would like just briefly to finish to read this question. There's not much left. And then tomorrow we can go on with the explanation. But it's just to understand that normally we have these ideas, okay, whatever tradition we follow is the same. As long as we talk about the conduct, which is love and compassion and developing a stability of the mind and many of these things, it's wonderful and that's fine. But when we arrive to talk about having a view that is coherent with reality, it doesn't matter what name we give. If we all analyze in a correct way, we should get to the same result. That's why also when we take quantum physics, it comes to a result that is extremely similar to the Madhyamika explanation that is given by Lama Tsongkhapa, Nagarjuna, and consequently Lama Tsongkhapa. It's extremely similar. Why? Because these are two people analyzing the same object in a coherent way. So at this point, there is a difference. It's not that anything we follow is fine. It's not exactly like that. Okay? And this doesn't mean we are criticizing anyone. Everyone can follow whatever they want. But when we come to the view, we should analyze reality in the best way as we can, in a coherent way. Okay? So I will just read the end of this. I will just make the reading of the end of this question, and then 56, and then after, tomorrow we will go through the explanation of it. Okay? Shenyang, Sokso so jorwa Lama namgi kapdans, Naro chodrudan, Nigu chodrugi kapnamsu, Salung tigle kebartu, Tumo gomsu sokyang, Michikpa mangrab duknang, Tenamni, Sanga ki tumo maimbe, Tablam tu nangwe, Sangwa drokpe, Kyuntu drowan sines, Yiger makotos, Ona, Ngame ngetuen samo kapnam kyang, Chashur tu midroams, Nyamnas, Te kunlani, Chaling gyaton tu shoryans, Gakcha midukchins, Tawasamo tokpe goba, duk nyamne, Yiger goba yinos. Dorna, mitumbe drupta galduk chen, Natso, Chik rang sane mawar dugnangs dogyu sokda mi tumbar rangso dache bashi chenani kang la yang mato teda mimbar dogyu dan tei gomre tsendengi dache pangtu tsukte rangi namchogi rikpe kyang te mitegi gyumtsen takne tongpa dan choku la ke duk choku tongwe tsam katsam la chedos chakchen dan jordu niga gyude samu namne tartu gi tritu kebar mebar esum sungna tawala keong gyurdukams midu kebartu semdida semgi nelo la kebar edu nelo tongba nikyang tsolo kangra shik che gobar dugnams. Gyawe gombadan tumbe namsha chenani gyawe sonrab tima mebala tri chewe gongre kempo namgi sungdans kebartu ludru yavsegi shungle tsalna lekpe mikche ongos thani damga samu namla hle jukpe gyumtseni dir nangtes nyamne la tse chiktu shol do kachini tösam la geksu zimbardu yang tösam chedu lala yang tösam chedu lala yang tamarne rangyola gomden solwe si michebar shema abdudam rang kedogi takam drube sambe kachir tesu shorne nangtu magomba lembe sos tena gyawe tempani tösam gompa sumge gone zingobe gyumse yang diinos kowe dietar tu rikpadang mi rikpa chungse number jebala yang gashinare tadong gyu matulwa duk serwa yang nangshins tendam chube rikshegi tenen namto neluksam ngowam shite nyebate tongpa nitam dewar she tongpa nitam deshegi nimpo lakshe kubisol dorna ludru luksangi ta dangalwe tawate punso yonte genden she chindre chitsam jonayang tamche kempa tashogi tarpa tsamya mitupche gombo kyoge katsepa dawe shabgi shebashin lekpar sungshe talmo jor. Okay. So we'll just do the reading in English of this part, so we conclude this reading of this question, and tomorrow we do the more detailed explanation about it, okay? Furthermore, there are many different ways of meditating on channels, winds, drops, and especially on the inner heat of Tumo, and so forth, in the case of life force exertion, and so forth, of the remaining branches, the 6 yogas of Naropa and the 6 yogas of Niguma. But they appear to be specific methods of the secret mantra vehicle. Therefore, thinking that I may create a fault of divulgating secrecy, I have not written them. Which means I am talking in the context of the sutra. I'm not going into detail of the tantra, but there are different explanations and ways of meditation within tantra which are also not explained in the very correct way. But I'm not going to enter into details about that right now because I'm talking in the context of sutra. If somebody thought, haven't you made a lapsus linguae earlier in the case of the profound definitive meaning? There, I do not see any negative consequences, even if there were hundreds of thousands of answers. I wrote those questions thinking that they would be beneficial to the realization of the profound view. Which means, haven't you maybe offended someone by making these questions before and showing that maybe some way of meditating is not correct? And Lama Tsongkhapa said, no, I haven't had the intention of offending anyone. I just want to make clear what is the correct way of meditating on emptiness. In short, although there are so many different contradictory tenets propounded from their own position, if it is all self-invented speech without conforming to sutra, tantra, and so forth, the proponents would not belong to any official philosophical school. This means it would be better if one took a valid statement from sutra, tantra, and the commentaries as a witness of the supportive scriptural authority. On that basis, one can then check why such is feasible or unfeasible through one's own intelligent reasoning to see. Which means it's better to have a teaching that we follow, a system that we follow, that is coherent with the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni and the commentaries later by Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti and so on. And then once we have these coherent teachings with all these great masters that have come through times, then we should analyze it and check, is it really feasible, is not, is it correct, is not? We should analyze also through ourselves and make the right questions. Such as, is there a difference between emptiness and Dharmakaya? What is the criteria of seeing Dharmakaya? If both Mahamudra and the 6 preparations are taught as an indifferent guiding commentary in a profound Tantra set, if there is a difference of viewing or not, if they are taught as indifferent guiding commentary. Especially, is there a difference between the mind and its mode of abundance or not? And to find out what one should do to search the final mode of abundance, emptiness. This is the main question. The main question that we should look is find out what one should do to search for the final mode of abundance, which is emptiness. What do I need to realize the true nature of reality? That's the most important thing. If one keeps a principle that accords with the thought of the victor, if one keeps a principle that is in accordance with the thoughts of Buddha Shakyamuni, the victor, and if one researches the writing of the scholars who have great familiarity with the immaculate discourses of the Buddha, of the victor, and who unravel the victor's thought, especially in the text of Nagarjuna and his spiritual son, he or she will then have the eyes of excellence. So we should look through the teachings of Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, and later Lama Tsongkhapa explained this to us so clearly. Here follow the reason for adulterating the profound instructions. Some of those who want to remain absorbed in practice single-pointedly consider the hearing of teaching and thinking about them as an obstacle. Why teachings become wrong somehow, are explained in a wrong way? Because there are some people that they just care about entering into meditative absorption. And they do not want to study. So for them, the process of studying and understanding and comprehending, they see as an obstacle. The only thing that you need to do is empty your mind, enter into a state of meditation. On the other hand, and some of those who want to hear and think and reflect upon the teachings from the very beginning start with an idea of degrading others and not to seek a subject of meditation for one's own continuum. There are some others who want very much to study and to have knowledge and to comprehend the teachings, but they only do this because they want to be the best of the class and to say that the other ones are wrong and to show that they have the right answer. They are not learning the teachings in order to practice them and to meditate within their own continuum. So they, due to the thought of obtaining a dry reputation, like wanting to become oneself a scholar, turn out to be extroverted beings and remain so because they lack meditation insight. So they just stay in the talking and saying, oh yes, this is right, that is wrong. They have all the philosophical ideas, but they are not ever meditating and bringing that concept within their own lives. This is other extreme. We have two, and these are the two main reasons why sometimes teachings go on the wrong direction. It is thus why it is necessary to preserve the victorious doctrine, Buddha's teachings, by way of all three: hearing, reflecting, and meditating. As I tried to make some distinction between what is appropriate to do and what is not appropriate to do, it looks like there are some who say his mental continuum is still untamed. Which means, what Lama Tsongkhapa is trying to do here is say, as I try to make distinction between what's the right way of practice and the wrong way of practice, some people don't like this and say, oh look, he still have anger and aversion, that's why he's saying this to us. His mental continuum is not tamed. But I'm not doing this out of aversion to anyone, I'm just trying to make clear what's the right and the wrong way of meditating on the path. Okay? And the answer goes by saying, when it is watched with the knowledge of reasoning, for analyzing ultimate truth, reality, the entity of the characteristics of conception is found. And I state respectfully that this is the emptiness of the Sugata Garva. It's the emptiness that Buddha taught. In brief, with a tradition that contradicts the noble tradition of Nagarjuna, forget about omniscience, forget about Buddhahood. One will not even attain mere liberation, no matter how much one can describe how it possesses hundreds of ideal qualities, as mentioned by the Savior yourself. Which means, this guy's the Savior is Lama Tsongkhapa. If you are meditating in the wrong way without being coherent with reality, it doesn't matter how many qualities you state your meditation have. It will have no result. I'm sorry. You can stay meditating for eons, have other results, but you will not eliminate ignorance. So, I joined my two palms together to you, to Lama Tsongkhapa, for your good teachings as taught by Chandrakirti. And here is just very briefly one important point, which is the fact why we say it's important to keep the Gelupa tradition pure. It's not a matter of saying Gelupa is better than others and we must keep our own tradition because it's the best. Lama Tsongkhapa, he made such a big work to put clarity into what is the correct view of reality, that we want to keep that clarity. That's the main thing. And otherwise, if we start to put things together without understanding really why, at a certain point we will lose it and we will start making meditations that are not coherent with what the teachings have said and are not necessarily coherent with reality itself. So here, it's not a matter, what Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, it's not a matter of liking one tradition or disliking the other. It's a matter of being objective and clear about what is reality and how is the best way to meditate in order to eliminate ignorance. That's all. Okay? And it doesn't matter, Panchen Losang Gyaltsen later, as Lama Tsongkhapa said very clear here, it doesn't matter what name you give to your tradition. We can call Mickey Mouse, whatever, okay? If we meditate in a way that is coherent with reality, wonderful. I prostrate to you. This is what Lama Tsongkhapa said in the very beginning. If you make a way that is incoherent with reality, then I am sorry, you need to study more. So basically this is where we get. Okay?
To Losang Ragada, Tele Losang Hiva, Tele Losang Hiva Dangi, Lama Ganzola, Shirinagi Imbre, the Indizane, Dan de Tamjegi, Jungul and Shevina, Aranzo Yonzo Kenya Chevina, teaching Logo Dangalanto, Bumgindin, Bum. Was get a boom into something, Yeva, Jing, Duba singing over. I didn't do going in and going in and I see going in and I manga going in and I think they look mambo dua. You know, take time to take the tomo, take the thing you can kill again. Take you around to the Dojaja when I long time. You know, I thought the San Yamaz of San Jene. And Sanjane Shana Sum with Tambodiri. That the Indians on the gate and the long chicken and then Shivajan. The Indians the teaching was a killing, thing was a killing. You told me some killing, Rudy. And I told the long the kind time goes to Jajiravan teaching big. Sanji legit. And I'm doing Langali in the channel in the Jat Nishua, Tin Nishua.
So, Rinpoche says, as now, these days, Lama Michel is explaining, and you are reading together the text of Lama Tsongkhapa Tiwa Laksam Rapkar, the very wholesome questions expressed with an extraordinary attitude, and the answers Trine Losan Shibedrayam, which means the melody of a noble-minded proposal by Panchen Losan Gyaltsen as an answer to the very wholesome questions of Lama Tsongkhapa. So these days you are going through this text, which is very, very important. But if we go to see where is all of this coming from, which is the roots of all of this, all these teachings, everything is coming from the teachings of Buddha himself. And when we go to look from all the sutras and all the tantras and everything, there is astrology and medicine, and most of it, it's all coming from the same source. So there is one first verse of Buddha which refers to this ultimate nature of reality, which is accepted both from Mahayana and Hinayana, Theravada tradition, and so on. But I'm going to cite it from one Mahayana sutra, which is called the Lalita Vishtara Sutra, which is the Sutra of the Divine Play, which we have represented on the pathway from the center to the Gompa. There is on stone, there is 120 panels with the life of Buddha. This is the representation of this sutra. So Rinpoche would like to give us the transmission of this verse and after a brief explanation about it.
Repeat me.
Petete.
Sabshi Tota Vasa Dumache.
Sabshi Tota Vesala Dumache.
Dizitabi Chushi Koyeni.
Dutsi Tabu Chushi Kovanye.
Sula Shejan Kor Minibi.
Sula Shekyang Kowar Minupe.
Mimanagi Tadu Nerja.
Mimenage Tsaltu Nebra Cha.
As Sanji Wambazo Sanji Netini. Jidega Wambazo Sanji to Zanta. It will get the chase Sua Kuma Tanda and Kumdua. Titisan Kumaris, Tatilenga Sha Shibishoko. And Dunda Chicken Kainada. Some diggings, Omjan digging, but the Kumaris in it. Sanji Omjan Shubro. Then Hatang Batan, Jealous of a captive Jigdembi. Rapping machine, Rabbi get the Hatters of Gidney. Yone. Sanjay Sotu Rabaji, Kaka Yama Kura, Omjanish Nijiro, and Kongundil Chini, the Pemo Salad Tuni. And it, I cannot deny this David Queen, Sulaki, Kwame, Mala, the Limasolona, Shed the Vulcan Solona, so the Taptos Ngay, Thinkings, and the Chara Shwings, and then Hassambagi. If you check your color and those things, and you check your color, Tajim dead. 산길 가야만 딱 라상발 나발 예베 찬젠들어 그디야 피 예진기 동갑에서 키워디야 피 이게 아피니 안 소로 나서는 소문은 따버려 근데 인제자는 등상한지 콜로도 동작 전부 뜨거야지 근데 이제 산지 서두를 산길 가야 자 잘라 요말다 이내 다디야 피빈전 나부진 것도 등상한지 아무 따지고 주된 tindi지래 yeah.
So as the verse says, profound So as Buddha said this verse, and he says in this verse, he says, okay, it was just after Buddha reached enlightenment, he recited this verse, and then with this he said, look, I'm going to stay alone. The verse says, I will stay by myself meditating where there is no one, in the end of the verse, which means after having realized enlightenment, there is no point, I will not go around saying to people because no one would understand what I said. Even now, as you can see, we can go and read, and it's still difficult to understand things. So it's not so obvious. So at the time, Buddha remained for 7 weeks meditating by himself, for 49 days at the forest in Bodh Gaya. And at the time, there were 2 gods, which is Brahma and Vishnu, I think. I always make some confusion with the names. Yes. Brahma and Vishnu. And they had clairvoyance. So they listened to Buddha when Buddha said the phrase in which they say, I realized this profound nectar, to whoever explained will be not able to comprehend it, so I remain by myself meditating where there is no one. So they went to Buddha, they put themselves the knee to Buddha, and they say, please, you have realized something so precious, do not keep it only for yourself. Please share it with others. And Buddha was just like a sadhu, he had nothing, he was just like living alone in the middle of the forest. So they say, we are going to give you the conditions for that, but please teach. And then Brahma gave to Buddha the wheel of Dharma. Now that we see it, something very precious and very important symbol, which is a symbol of Buddhism, which is we call the Dharma wheel. It was the own personal object, let's say, symbol of Brahma, and he offered this to Buddha. And then Vishnu offered his own symbol, which is a right turning white conch. And then he offered this to Buddha. And then from that, then after that, then is when Buddha went to Varanasi and when he started giving the first teachings.
Yeah. At the Indizana Tambo, Sangi Lengal Fitizon, Sombo, Kaganda, Sambo singing Nila. And he was in Jugarnistaki, Jugag, Teats, Goshira Sombre. A Tongo Kal Songa, the Nakal Songa, Durkal, Tea Tambode. Yamba Himason Kola, Sangi Tande, Tixi Tidan. 아니 세거서 이거는 아주 좋게 준 도와요래 응게요래 어디지 되네 와르네스 페네 엠바시 소르바 엠바시 송디자네 된들 다 콜로 담보다 콜로 바바도 콜로 다마도 다 된데 마부 이지잖아 무슨 마시에 먹고체 인데 마부 송체네 두지요래 이나야다 또 콜랑 전다 갈수는데 섭시 쩌자 회사 도마체 디지털이 최시 쿠에니 솔로 시장 코알 미네비 메말라기 사트네가 차스 티르바다 디마소.
So after this, Buddha went to Sarnath, but on the way to Sarnath, he met a group of businessmen, and then 2 of them, which the name of these 2 men in Tibetan is Kakon and Sangon. They were from the area nearby Burma. And then when Buddha met them, they asked Buddha for a blessing and for something to help them. So Buddha gave the first teaching, actually the first advice after reaching enlightenment was given to these 2 men, and it was based on astrology. So it's where Buddha explained from the astrological point of view what they should do in order to have success in their lives and activities and so on. And this we have this sutra that after, in which it talks about the 28 lunar mansions. Okay, and so this is something which was taught at that time. And then after that, Buddha reached Varanasi, where he taught first the Four Noble Truths, and there we have the 3 cycles of teachings: the beginning one, the middle one, and the last one, which we don't need to go into details right now about it. But this is the process when after Buddha went to give teachings. And so, based on that, we have the first teaching, but the first words that Buddha said that we have reference after he reached enlightenment is the one that Rinpoche has just transmitted to us, which is Sabshitra Dumache, profound and peaceful, free of elaboration and non-composed, as clear light as non-composed. So, profound, peaceful, Sabshit, free of elaboration, Turtle. Substitute vessel of clear light and non-composed. Such a nectar I have realized. To whoever I may explain will not be able to understand it. So I remain in the forest where there is no one. This was the first word which Buddha said. And when he says profound and peaceful, free of elaborations, as clear light and non-composed, such a nectar, I have realized, these are all the qualities of emptiness. These are all the different aspects of emptiness. There are different levels of peace, but the greatest level of peace is emptiness itself, is the realization of emptiness itself. So, this is the first teaching that Buddha gave, and so the first words that Buddha taught was this, which were referring to emptiness, to the true nature of reality. And then, after he gave these teachings on astrology, then after he gave the Four Noble Truths and so on, as we know. Okay. So, not the sutra that we have just said, it exists, it is accepted both in Mahayana traditions and in Theravada, Hinayana traditions. And at the same time also there is another mantra, which is the prayer of interdependence, which is also accepted in both traditions, Theravada and Mahayana. The only difference is that in the Theravada tradition, it doesn't have the Om in the beginning and the Soha in the end. So it is Ye Dharma Hetyum Prabhava Hetyum Deshan Tatagatu Yavadata Deshan Chaya Niroda Evam Vadima Ashramanaye. While in the Mahayana tradition, it is Om Ye Dharma Hetyum Prabhava Hetyum Deshan Tatagatu Yavadata Deshan Chaya Niroda Evam Vadima Ashramanaye Swaha. And both of these are actually talking about the interdependence of phenomena. Okay? And it's a very deep and profound meaning also. Okay. Now, translation is finished. So I will add something while Rinpoche comes back 1 second. It's just the fact of the verse that Rinpoche just said before. It's like when we say profound and peaceful, free of elaboration, as clear light and non-composed, such a nectar. We have these 6 aspects of emptiness. Okay? So it is profound because it's the ultimate nature of reality. In anything that we look, the deepest aspect that we can find is that it lacks inherent existence. So it's profound. Okay? Sabshi Chudral. It's free of elaborations because there is not such a thing as big emptiness, small emptiness, beautiful emptiness, or ugly emptiness. So it doesn't have any elaborations. It is as clear light. This is a little bit more difficult way of explaining, but because it refers, from my understanding, to the ultimate nature of our mind. Clear light refers to the very subtle mind also. So it refers to the fact that the true nature of our very subtle mind is the lack of inherent existence. So this is also the nature of our very subtle mind. And it's also showing that the realization should come within the very subtle state of our mind, which is called clear light. But this is one of the points which have different interpretations of this word. Then it is also non-composed because emptiness is not changing. Emptiness is permanent. The emptiness of yesterday, the emptiness of today, and the emptiness of tomorrow is always the same. It's not that it has some change in it. So emptiness is permanent. That's why it's non-composed. Okay? And it's also like a nectar, because from all the different types of nectar, the best type of nectar is the nectar that eliminates completely all defilements and all suffering. And the realization of emptiness is the solution for all our suffering and all our defilements. That's why it's a nectar. And it is realized with a state of great bliss.
에단 뒤지 생게니 넥달 생게도 뒤질 생거로
Larela.
먼저 페베 줘야지 싫어 할래면 야구 줘요. 뒤 생게인데 kon 빠야 차지. 뒤 생게인데 레비 차지. 그니 jan 뒤지서로 상게 부다 생게들라 상게 세네. 이마마 상게도 상게부터 싫어 할래면 유리 야구 줘요. 아들이 먼저 저저 인자 대한도 쉬 대신을 몰더니 드링 먼저 다다와 산게 좀 된데 기부담에 되지리 간지도 보고는 되는 지사를 선생님은 이네 통과한지 나야래 인당한테 한도 쉬우래 되지.
So also when we talk about the word nectar, in Tibetan is translated as dutsi. And the way of translating in Tibetan is actually quite amazing because du refers to something negative, tsi refers to something positive,
impure and pure.
which means like du means something impure, tsi means something pure, so it's like transforming the impure into pure. And it's similar to the word sangye, which is a translation of the word Buddha in Sanskrit, which refers to eliminate defilements and develop qualities. So really the way how the words were translated into Tibetan has been very amazing, the work that many translators have done. But anyhow, today is the full moon day, and it's Zamlin Chisang, which is the day of making offerings to all the deities of the world. And it's the day where in Tashilumpu they are putting today the big tanka of the Buddha of the present, Buddha Shakyamuni. Tomorrow there is going to be in Tashilumpu Kala Chakra initiation. So by His Holiness the 11th Panchen Lama. And today, so it's an auspicious moment. So as being an auspicious day, I wanted just to add a few words at this auspicious moment today. Okay. So we now just do the final dedication of the teachings. And I would like just to say that due to Rinpoche's kindness, I have been able to receive the teachings on this text of Lama Tsongkhapa and the answers by Panchen Losang Gyaltsen in Tashilumpu in Tibet. But it's very interesting. I'd just like to share one very short thing. It's very interesting because there is two texts that Rinpoche, when he was living in India, he always liked it very much, so he made it possible to print. At that time, it was quite difficult to print books. So he printed two texts which were not so well known and read, which is the Daksin Shaktip, the discussion between wisdom and ignorance. And then later, also Rinpoche printed at the time also these two texts here that we are reading, the questions of Lama Tsongkhapa, Tuan Lhasa Rabkar, and the answers of Panchen Losang Chokyi Gyaltsen, Trine Losang Shebedrayan. And for me, something very nice, it has been that when I started reading these texts, I always had a special connection and wish to learn them. But I only came to know that Rinpoche printed them, and I always liked these texts later. So somehow, these are not texts that are well known. People know that they exist, but they are not so much read somehow. I don't know exactly what's the specific reason, but are not texts that they're like very well known texts. But Rinpoche always gave a lot of importance for this text. Out of whatever connection, I always gave a lot of importance, so I went to receive requested teachings. And after I requested teachings, I came to know that Rinpoche printed copies of this text before and so on. So we are very fortunate, it's very special that we can actually share and read it together here. Sure, some aspects we understand, some aspects we don't understand. But this is the same for Tibetans also. Huh? I'm quite sure if we take most of the Tibetans, if they don't have a very great level of understanding of the Dharma and read this text in Tibetan, we can only understand a part of it. This is because it has a compendium of knowledge and we don't have all the knowledge right away. But it's so beautiful for me to have the opportunity to read and to share the understanding about these important subjects, which the one of today is the correct view of reality. Okay? The same thing is also for the Sutra of the Lalita Vistara, the Divine Place Sutra, which Dogyacheropa, which was said to be somehow a translation in French, but very rare. So we made the translation into English, Italian, and so on. So this is also something that we did new.
Jetsun lame kutse rapten chim namkar tinle chochur gepadang Losang tempe dreme sasumgi drove munsel tatu ne gyurchi Nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delekshin Nyinsen taktu delekpe Koncho sumge jingilo Koncho sumge ngodrup tsol Koncho sumge rashiyasho. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the true jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.